obviously we have a little chat beforehand, and then I've done in the past, I sort of dived into like sort of assume some sort of show persona, like some
Hi,
sort of.
you've been joining me here
This
at
is it.
Strategy Creative.
This is it, and I hate myself for it every time I do it. Every time I do it, a little part of me dies. So I've decided to just abandon that, and then I do an intro in post.
Oh, well, that means you can say anything about the guest as well. Like, hold on to your hats because this one's a real knob.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, but you're going to have to endure it as well. So, like, Tim, you're a beer branding specialist. Is that the best job in the world?
Yeah, it's up there when you can combine your loves with your passions. That what's that, ikigai, or the idea?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the Japanese philosophy.
Sure.
Yeah, go with that.
We'll go for that. But yeah, it is, love a bit of brand, love a bit of design, love a bit of beer and the culture and the community that brings together. So why not bundle that into a big old occupation of joy?
Yeah, because I checked when we initially spoke, sort of set this up a few weeks back, you were not zeroed in on the beer industry, but obviously now you are. So I thought, he's discovered the secret. He's found the secrets of life, and I applaud you. I applaud you for it.
Oh, thank you very much, sir.
So how did you get into doing branding strategy in particular? Like, it doesn't feel like, and maybe you're going to absolutely slap me on the wrist and tell me no, I'm absolutely wrong, but it doesn't feel like a sort of path that people take through university. It feels like something that you sort of learn as you get into the world. So I'm intrigued to sort of hear your journey to doing what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Like the strategy side of things came to it like arse about face, really. And it was a case of like, I used to play in bands, and I was a drummer in a touring metal band for a long time. And so found my passion for designing by attempting to create god awful logos and merchandise and things for the bands.
Was it all the gothic typography, a lot of black and
yeah. Lots of blood drips,
yes.
Lots of just terrible use of gothic black weight lettering stuff because it's emo and a broken heart and all the cliches that we thought were cool at the time. Even an album cover with a guy with a balloon head and a gun held to his head was just like the most creative breakthrough I've ever had.
That's perfect.
But yeah, so luckily I evolved from that. I went to uni, studied design, and then got junior design placement while studying, and was doing things like really basic stuff like email newsletter design.
Was that in-house or agency?
It was an agency that I worked at. So it was they focused on e-commerce fashion.
Yeah.
So just pulling together the little bits, just doing the odd jobs to help those guys out, and really treading the boards and learning my skills there way more than at university. And then, your skills go from newsletter to a bit of web design. And then web design, you encounter a bit of logo and identity design. And then you do, we're picking this up more than a website. We can do a creative campaign which goes on the website. And keep on building up to the point that I was now creative director of an agency, niche agency, doing kind of brand strategy, but not using the name brand strategy, like doing all the research and coming up with the concept at the end, which was what we would just call the story. And then like the penny drop moment where it's like, oh, okay, so people have a name for this. This is brand strategy. And everything actually evolves out from this.
Yeah.
I was doing this massive, like, spiraling down the creative drain until I got to the epicenter, which is strategy. Yeah. And I can now slowly crawl my way out like a spider trying to escape their impending death. But it's good fun.
Very graphic imagery there, but I suppose as a graphic and brand strategist, it's probably fitting. So like, so now you're sort of doing this for yourself. How long have you been, I mean, do you consider yourself a consultant, freelancer? How does that actually break down? Because obviously copywriting is copywriting, but brand strategy, how do you refer to yourself? And how long have you been doing it?
I am the brand weaver. I run the brand weaver agency in that respect. So it's myself and the wider myself. There's a big ego thing going on there.
Yeah.
But I've been doing it for I think I'm in my 15th year of being a creative. Mm-hmm. But then brand strategist, you're looking at 4 or 5 years that, evolving through the creative director kind of route and into specific brand strategy now with the brand weaver, which then springboards into so much more.
Yeah. So you talked about 12 years working agency. So have you just done the one agency and then gone solo? Is that right?
No. So I was with 2 other agencies. So I progressed through. So there was the agency that I did my kind of part-time junior design work with,
Mm.
and that was in between university. So I did like 2 days at uni, 3 days with those guys, which was killer. Like it was amazing. It was the best thing, and I highly recommend it to anyone in the creative industry. Or don't even bother going to university and actually just get out there into an agency and learn. From there, I then moved on after I graduated just to be a general designer, a general creative, and then slowly became kind of head of the team there, and then moved in. That agency actually evolved into being the niche agency that I became the creative director of. So it was that transition through the three where I got to the top, what I consider the top anyway, in the agency realm, before I went, that's enough for me. Time to do something that I'm truly passionate about, because it was niching in the independent school sector, which was great for the time, but it's not me. It's not where my passion lies. So it was the right thing to do.
So I'm an independent school boy. Which schools was it? Are you
Oh,
allowed to share?
well, I mean, over the time, and this is a long period of time, it's like 13 odd years, but we worked with Harrow, Repton, Harvard Westlake out in the USA, Dubai British schools. We were out in Malaysia. We were all over the shop. It's a lot of them, 60, 70 odd clients.
To me, and maybe this is because I'm pig ignorant of this sort of stuff, but like once you've seen one independent school, they all kind of seem exactly the same in terms of they've all got that sort of like shield emblem that they use as the logo. It's all that kind of serif font with and like old school sort of vibes to them, because they're all about history and prestige, right? Is that fair?
I mean, on the surface, you are completely right. And I think that's where I truly start to recognize the power of something like brand strategy, because it is the story that helps you to communicate beyond what is the stereotypical observations of like, oh, it's a boater or it's a crest, or there's the Harry Potter-esque buildings. Like whilst every independent school shares a similar combination of elements, it's either how you bring those together or what's actually beneath the surface that you can really leverage to find something quite unique about them. And it's not a case of going, oh, you've got to have a USP, because no one's got a bloody USP these days. When everyone's trying to do something different, nothing is different. But it's the combination of a number of things. It's that alchemy that truly brings like your own offering to the table, and then how you communicate that, how you engage with your audience and get that through to them. That's the important thing. But we were talking previously, like the reason I moved away from it and now running brand strategy for, everyone, or breweries especially, is the idea of collaboration. Like the independent school market, there was always a struggle because it is ran by alpha dominant, humans. And you have to be opinionated. You have to be strong-headed in order to lead a ship as big and as cumbersome and as archaic as those. But it's also very hard for that kind of person to then take on board any external feedback, especially when it comes to the likes of consumers or parents, in a way that really makes an impact in the market.
Yeah, there's so much history and heritage in independent schools as well. I guess that there is a tendency or a reluctance to, to kind of take constructive, like take that sort of stuff on board and like then go against the kind of the norms and the history, and that's kind of what they're all built up on. We had so I went to Bradfield, and we used to have on a Friday mornings we would have to wear our scholarly cloaks to the chapel for service. It sounds ridiculous, but because it was. And the headmaster at the time went away and put the deputy headmaster in charge for a month. And his first day, he was like, right, that's it. Those cloaks, those gowns, like they're like gone. You don't have to wear them anymore. And I was just thinking like and he was easily 30 years younger than the headmaster. And you sort of think it needs that sort of fresh blood, fresh perspective, or someone who's willing to kind of push against. But it felt there was definitely backlash and repercussions, I reckon, for him for making that decision when the old guy got back, for sure. So like, what for you? I mean, you talked about it a little bit then in terms of what the great components of a brand are, but what does great branding look like to you, and what are the components that a great brand has?
The big question, right? And I'm sure if you asked every brand strategist, every brand person is going to have a different answer to this. I think the easiest, the straight route is one that it's not just a logo. And I think that's something that brand people constantly battle against. It's like, oh, you make me a pretty logo. It's like, no, a logo is part of your brand. It's by no means the be all and end all of it. It's a very small amount. But in my opinion, a great brand is a brand that resonates, a brand that people feel like they can share in, enjoy. And there's almost that kind of symbiotic relationship between business and consumer where it feels like it's meant to be part of their life. It ingrains into their rituals in a way that feels comfortable, not being shoehorned in, but it's an extension, it's an expansion, it's an improvement on who they are. I think a lot of brands these days, or a lot of consumers these days, invest and align with brands because it reflects their own values and it is an extension of themselves. You look at the likes of Liquid Death and, for everything that's doing, how awesome it is, they zig when everyone else zags. People buy it because they want to be the person holding the cool looking drinking water which has skulls and flames on it at the end of the day, or at least I do. So something that enhances the consumer's experience and a memorable experience, in my opinion, is an awesome brand.
So because I think a lot of people that would be listening to this will probably be much smaller than a Liquid Death. Just on Liquid Death, have you seen the brand in America that's come out that's not beer, and it looks like a can of Budweiser, but it just says not beer on it?
Yeah, I saw that doing the rounds on LinkedIn, and everyone's just ripping it apart now. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's rubbish. It was what AI would generate.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right, isn't it? It's like it's a pastiche, and imitation is like the greatest form of flattery as well, I guess. So fair play to Liquid Death. There's a really good interview on the Uncensored CMO podcast with, oh my god, his name's gone out of my head, but with the founder of Liquid Death, and he talks through his approach to marketing and deliberately doing the most opposite thing that everybody else in the water industry was doing. But we're not talking about that.
Right? When I jumped on LinkedIn on April 1st, it just looked like everyone had taken a leaf out of the Liquid Death marketing playbook because everyone was just mucking around and doing something different. And then you realize, oh no, they're doing that because it's April 1st. They're not trying to be bold, not trying to be engaging. Yeah. It's just part of the routine.
I forgot what I was going to ask you. I had a question about that. You talked about what makes a great brand. So where do small brands go wrong? Like, what do they maybe focus on too heavily or don't focus on enough? Like, what are they getting wrong when it comes to brand strategy?
I think 9 times out of 10, what I've seen is it's the rush to the end. It's the rush to the identity. And having something visual because they want to get it out there. They want to get it as the Instagram thumbnail. They need it on the landing page for the website for the product launch that's coming. And they skip quite possibly the most important part, which is research. Because without research, you can't make informed choices. You can't make informed decisions. You can't go, well, we know this will work, or this has a higher chance of working because we've discovered X, Y, and Z. And then it's almost a shoehorning process, or you're trying to evolve and adjust a brand once it's already out there. The horse is already bolted, and now you're just trying to change the spots on it. Terrible analogy.
Yeah, no, there's not a lot of spotty brands out there. Probably someone will point me out that there's loads. I just
Target.
Yes. They've got 3. So like, interesting thing on that, right? Because yes to research, and like I do a lot of research with clients when it comes to content. Like, it's an extension of the brand strategy and the marketing sort of plan that has to be built on audience insight, what where they are, how you're going to find them, what resonates, what messages work, what doesn't. But like, for someone like Liquid Death, as just going back to that example, like, there can't have been. I'm interested because it sort of feels like that to me felt like a gut instinct play. Maybe there's some research, but it's not like there's a comparable thing. I guess you could show them pictures of like, would you buy this drink or this drink? But there has to be some sort of level of assumption or position or feeling or something from either the founder or someone in there that's got a direction and a plan, like, first, right?
There's always going to be a gut feeling. Like, every business is spawned from an idea or a need to solve a problem in some way, shape, or form. And like they say, success leaves clues. Whilst we look at Liquid Death going, it is this rebellious alternative brand, you just have to look and go, well, there's Monster Energy, there's Relentless, there are these energy drinks who adopt some of the market space, albeit not for sparkling water, but it's not a dramatic difference from what they were doing, inspired by then the Red Bulls before that. It's just an evolution. And I suppose it's this thought to go, well, we're going to do the opposite, but it's still informed. So I think there definitely is still you've got to look at the history and what has worked to some extent, and then maybe turbocharge it in a way, put a rocket to it and see how. But there's always going to be a foundation. There's a basis of an idea that you can explore and build your research around.
So what does the research process look like for you? And I know that we're going to talk in a minute about a project of yours, and you've got some results to share with us of like the value of, a well thought out, well built brand strategy. But what does a solid process look like? What are the sort of steps which you have to take? What's the kind of like gold package? Like if you could do everything, like you'd want all of this. Like what's the sort of step by step, and what's the nice to haves and the must haves?
I think my process, it goes through 5 core phases, which the first phase is research, then move into defining the audience. You're then looking at the brand core, so your purpose, mission, vision, values. We then move into brand core, the brand language, and then it is what I call the battle plan, like going to market with the brand, how you inject it at each and every one of the touch points. But to go back to the research, it's a triangle. It's what I call the Alchemy Triangle, where you of course have your strengths, or what you believe are the strengths of the business and the brand, but that is equally balanced with what your consumer is looking for, what their needs are, their goals, their desires, and what the local and wider competition are doing. Because you can't really make any kind of informed choices without knowing all 3 of them. Because if you don't know what the competition are doing, you might end up looking the same. You don't know how to kind of, not necessarily better them, but differentiate yourself from them. And if you don't know what your consumer wants, how are you going to engage them in a way that really, really resonates and actually pulls them in? Otherwise, you're just shouting about what you think makes you awesome, and that looks a little bit egotistical a lot of the time.
You see it quite a lot, and I'm probably guilty of that. I haven't done. There's too many content strategists on LinkedIn. That's the problem for me. I need to find a way to differentiate. I'll definitely be. Well, you specialize in beer, so maybe I'll be a beer strategist, and then we'll work together.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's make magic.
So I want to dive into a project of yours. We spoke a couple of weeks back because you just completed brand launch for Vale Brewery. So I wanted to just talk through that project. So let's start right at the beginning. So how did you kind of get introduced to this client? Like what happened there? Did they find you? You found them?
I insulted them. So
okay.
I was in their tap room enjoying their beers, potentially enjoying their beers too much, and then decided to insult the quality of work that I saw on the clips. And I was like, oh, who does this? Like, it's not great. And lo and behold, I was talking to one of the co-owners of the brewery, one of the brothers, and they were like, oh yeah, it's this kind of side agency, but we inherited them when we bought it. We're looking to move away. Do you know anyone? I was like, what? Yeah. And then the conversation started, and we partnered up on like a small project. It was almost like a teaser, test the water piece for one beer that they were bringing out. They really liked the process. There were hints of brand strategy within that, where I wanted to explore more than just the identity. It's like, well, who's drinking it? Why is this different to others? And what's the story to tell? And they started to see the value in that pretty rapidly, because then we did it to 2 others that they were releasing. So made a trio of cans, and then they dropped the bomb. It's like, we're going to rebrand and we want you to do it. Those things that we hinted at in the cans, we're going to do the full thing. And it was game on.
So they obviously came to an epiphany, or like a moment where they realized we need to do things differently. We need to kind of overhaul. To me, I immediately then wanted to say the visual identity, and I know that they're different things, right? The visual identity is like the final piece of that project. But they obviously you came in with the visual stuff and said, I don't think this looks particularly great. You did some visual launches for products, and they've come back and said, look, we want to rebrand. So what happened with them? What were the conversations that they were having? What was the kind of insight that made them go, do you know what, we need to do the whole thing?
It was, so they bought the brewery just before COVID and kept it going, but didn't change much about it during that time, because naturally it's rocky times, right? You can't do anything too dramatic. They knew they were on something good. It had a good local reputation, but if it was going to ever be anything more than a local favorite, they had to get things sorted. Like the obvious thing, because it's visual, are is the identity, you know, the van wraps, what were on the clips, what were on the bottles. But as soon as you scratch beneath the surface, when they're going in and having conversations with distributors or pub owners, or, you know, even stockists, when it comes to, you know, getting your bottles in shops, there's the questions of like, well, why your beer? Why is it different? Why should we stock this over that? And you can't turn around with the answer of like, well, we've got a pretty bottle, or it's quality ingredients and it's a quality product, because you sound the same as everyone else. And so that's where the need for a strong brand and the strategy really came in, because it's, you know, the results are there. They're so much more confident walking into those situations going, this is who we are, this is what the brewery's about, this is what we stand for and why we're different, that people are going, I get it. Let's give it a go. Let's sign you guys up and get you on taps.
I think there's something to be said for that confidence in delivery as well. Like, yes, doing the discovery, to figuring out exactly what you stand for, what you represent is like the fundamental bit. But I reckon, or it must be that if you can go into a stockist, into a distributor, and be confident, talk assuredly about your brand with, you know, with chest, as they say, like that does open a lot of doors, a lot of fridge doors.
Massively. Like, it's because the strategy process, it covers everything. So when you talk about like who your consumer is, you do persona work. So we, you know, I gave these people names, and we've got this guy, this mythical persona we affectionately call Charles with a veil. And they're constantly referring back to Charles. And it's like, oh, well, would Charles like this? Would Charles understand this? And so they can talk to the distributor, knowing the kind of person who's going to walk down the aisle of the Co-op or Marks and Spencer's and pick that bottle off the shelf. They know who they're competing against, and they go, well, this is how they address their audience, this is what they're doing, but this is why we're a wonderful complement or something different. They know where their beers fill the gap in the market, because we did the consumer research, we did the market research. Like the 3 canned beers I was talking about originally fill, I think it was a 92%, you know, demand in the market. So any pub that stocks those 3 beers, that's 9 out of 10 people walking through are going to want one of those, because that's the kind of beer that people drink. And then you just layer on top the story, why it's different, and those extra wonderful elements, and it all of a sudden becomes a no-brainer. If you, like you say, if you can go into a conversation knowing all of this, and because they've been through it, they were part of the journey all the way through. This wasn't me going to them going, this is you, here you are, read it, learn it, and recite it.
Yeah.
It was done in collaboration. So there's a massive sense of pride when they can talk about it, because it just distills what they already had, but in a way that they can wax lyrical about consistently. People are just going, this is great, sign me up.
So what were some of the insights that came out of the research? What were some of the like aha moments that kind of made them think differently about what they were doing?
I think that the biggest ones came at the very beginning with the research side of things, which is, who is our target consumer? You know, these guys are mid to early 30s brewery owners. You know, the eldest brother big into his ale, the younger brother more into your kind of craft, but also a high appreciation for ale. So already the wrong target demographic for what is a traditional ale drinker, your grey-haired, you know, middle to older age white male. And there is, you look on the shelves in any shop, and it's dominated by your, I don't know, Beaver Towns and Brew Dogs, and kind of very modern typography or highly vibrant illustrative. Yep. And so it's so easy to fall down the trap of that, going, that's what a cool brewery needs.
Yeah.
But as you start to do the research, as you get your questionnaire results back, as you look at the general ages, you go, if we put anything like that out there, it's just going to alienate the majority of the drinkers who are actually going to be consuming and looking for this kind of product. And so we could immediately, me personally, I could immediately put away my metal band background and go, well, they're not looking for the liquid death approach. They're not looking for the gothic type treatment. We're not looking for flaming skulls. We're actually in a totally different market. And so let's play with that. Let's not lean into the stereotypes, though. Let's not make it look like you walked into Clinton's Cards and picked up a birthday card for your granddad. There are other things that still resonate with that market. And so you understand target market, and then you play on their area, which is Vale. So it's the Vale landscape, it's the Bucks countryside. And there is so much rich history in there. You know, kind of the Great Train robbery, but Ronnie Biggs, he hid just miles down the road from where the brewery is. You've got the Prancing Pony in Lord of the Rings was inspired by one of the pubs in the local area. So there's so much in there that you can pull out and just weave this incredible story. So, and all the research highlighted that you are given a bouquet of awesomeness to play with if you do your research right, and then it's just slotting the pieces together like a well-created puzzle.
I love that. So how did that manifest then, right? So you've got all that insight, you've got the fact that the drinker is, is not going to be drawn to the flashy, illustrative, bold typeface cans, of which I was literally in Tesco just before recording this, and that seems to be the entire craft ale aisle now. So you've got all of this great insight, you've got the local history. Like, how did that manifest into the brand and the next steps? How did you bring that to life?
It was collaboration with the guys. Like, they knew they wanted something that felt natural, true to the area. I mean, when you've got a name like Vale, it is the name of the area, so you're not going to try and move too far away from it in that respect. And so we were looking at like what would resonate, what style would appeal. And when you go back and you look at kind of the traditional, more vintage illustrative styles of the Famous Five or the British rail illustrations, and that sense of nostalgia that people look at and goes, that feels quintessential. It feels British, but it feels like a story. It's something that it warms your heart. We're like, that's something that we can play with. And then we can bring in the landscape. We can, a landscape is a big platform to play with. You can drop a train in successfully. You can drop in horses or a landscape. And we built the narrative off of that. So now every clip, every bottle features the Vale landscape as the backdrop to the story that we tell for each of the individual beers. So, for example, Black Beauty Porter, Porter, the story being that it was the drink that was, consumed by the porters in London. The London Railway would ship out building supplies out into the Vale area. So the clip naturally captures that wonderful steam engine blasting through the countryside. There's London, the big smoke in the background, couple of galloping horses as a nod to Black Beauty. But we can entwine all of that into something that people look like, that it's almost the front of a book cover where you could go, yeah, the Famous Five get on a train for a day. Terrible book. If you ever read it, you should probably find one of the better Famous Five ones. But you know what I mean.
I do, yeah. I literally, while you were talking, I went to look at their website, and the graphics are really, really nice. And like when you were sort of describing the scenery and like grounding people in Vale, like it's really nice. So I'll make sure to add a link to the show notes. What about the names? Were the names already in existence, or did they also get sort of wrapped up in this? Was it a complete sort of overhaul of all the kind of naming conventions, product titles, all of that side of it as well?
So the names are the original names. We did explore, like the guys were very open to going, well, we might have to challenge, we might have to see what we do. And we removed Vale from the front of some of them. Like we had Vale, for example, it's now purely Best because the identity, the brand Vale sits next to it. So you'd be doubling up Vale, Best. But because there was always a strategy which is kind of win in your local market, and when the local market loves it, then it's much easier to expand beyond. As everyone talks about, it's so much harder to get any kind of reach with any kind of product these days digitally. You want that really strong following and loyalty locally so it can grow that way. And so the names of the beers, Brill Gold, Brill is the location that the brewery is. It has that heritage, it has that history, and others are just beer names at best. Witchet was a building material that is used in the local area that not many people know of. So they already have that sense of heritage and history, and it already lends itself to the narrative. What we did more so was explore expanding on the narrative beyond the name. So when people did rotate the bottle around or want to talk to someone about it, they're like, okay, this is what it's about. This is what it's suitable for. Looking at consumer rituals. So we positioned VPA, Vale Pale Ale, as the summertime beer, as the festival beer when you're at a beer fest, because these guys are all over the shop. The clip is a scene of a beer festival and everyone having a lovely time. So when you've got your punters at the beer fest, they're going, well, clearly I've got to have one of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Or when you're sat down for the roast dinner, you're going to have Brill Gold because that's the wonderful home, the heartwarming beer. The couple happily look at the homestead and going, yeah, this complements. So entwining it into consumer rituals has been another element that we've added into it whilst respecting the original name.
That's nice. Because in classic sort of naming things, Twitter recently went to X, and nobody calls it anything else. Everybody calls it Twitter still. And I think people have an affinity and connect to product names and beer names. Like, just imagine Guinness changing its name now. It's just sort of unheard of, right? So I just wondered whether they were at that stage where it was a bit of a blank canvas in a way. So it's out in the market now. It's launched. Like I said, I'll add a link to all the to the website and stuff. So what did the kind of launch process look like? What was the sort of activation that you guys went through?
So it is out in the market, but I wouldn't say it's 100% out there. You know, it's been soft launched, as it were, because the guys are actually in a process where they've got to roll through old stock, so old bottles and so, which have the old labels on, and the new ones come in. But like you say, if you go to the website, you'll see some of the examples of the language and the visuals we've been working on. But then the activation of it was to focus on the clip side of things. So when you walk into a bar, you know, you're looking at your side pocket for a toad, you're looking at your Rebellion, and then you've got the Veil one that really pops out at you. That was the main customer touch point that we needed to double down on, because that was going to be the main standout piece. It was then to look at the bottles, because then that's what you buy online, what you can get in the tap room. And alongside that, it was some early pieces of sales collateral for the team. So their presenter, their proposal, those core pieces have been crucial. I was chatting to the guys just the other day where they sent a presenter over to one distributor who was going to stock 3 of their beers, got to one page in the presenter where all the beers were lined up side by side, and that's 7 core beers, picked up the phone and said, actually, I want all 7. Because when you see it like that, you see the story, you get it, and it's like, yeah, I want to collect the whole set.
That's quite nice. That's a nice little insight as well, that people sort of say they want to collect the whole set or see them all together, and that's a nice piece of design work to make them work as a collective whole as well. So what has been the, you said you've got some results of it, so I wonder if you can share some of the highlights, some of the some of the results from it. What have the guys seen?
Yeah, so as we're in soft launch right now, but even within, it was the first, I think it was first 2 months, they have expanded their distribution network with 2 additional distributors, and these are not small distributors. Like, they're, you know, we're going from Buckspace to now 50% of the UK kind of coverage.
Oh wow,
which is phenomenal. They anticipate that those 2 alone will bring in at least 75k within the first year. One of them was the distributor reaching out to them after seeing the work. So that wasn't even them knocking on doors, sending the presenter or anything like that. And when you think that's in the very early days and the brand isn't even fully rolled out yet, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, they've launched their beer club membership, and they are, I think within the first month or month and a half, they had 60 members on that. So that's a reoccurring membership, and it continually grows. You know, a loyal community who are developing through that. They're just going through what's known as the SALSA accreditation. You're seeing the clips in Wetherspoons now. So actually the Black Beauty Porter that we talked about is on bars in Wetherspoons, if anyone ever goes there in certain places. So there's some really exciting growth opportunities and growth coming off the back of what we've done, and what the hard work that the guys are putting in as well.
Yeah, the distinctive nature of it, like I said, I've just come from Tesco's, and there's nothing that really sort of sits and looks like the bottles that are on the homepage now. So that's a really positive sign as well. Are they set up? And I don't know whether they want you to necessarily divulge all of this, but are they set up for potential? You know, if it does go national, if it does make its way into, I mean, it's a nice
They
problem
have
to
their
have,
eyes
right?
set on
Yeah.
growth. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
That's the goal, right? You know, whilst I say it's winning in your local market, these guys will and know how to get it out there further. It's a matter of time, but they feel so confident now. You know, we were talking earlier on that feet on the ground, knocking on doors, talking to people, they can genuinely, authentically articulate the brand story and the strengths without it feeling like that icky car salesman pitch. It's like, let's sit down, let's have a chat, you know, leave them with a touch point of a couple of the beers that they can enjoy. And you get people picking up the phone and going, yeah, let's be part of this, because people can see it's a brewery on the up. There's a journey to be part of. And it is just mega exciting. I can't wait to see what happens in the next year, 2 years.
Yeah, it's a good story. I can't remember what it's called. There's a definite psychological thing that humans have. It's a kind of bias that we have, that when we attach greater resonance and greater taste, it's why like posh fine dining restaurants always make a song and dance about how they bring the food out, and like sometimes the chef will come and talk to you about the ingredients. All of those things add that kind of heightened sense of, and give you, make the food taste better or whatever. So like having a really rich, powerful story that people can connect with, and like local scenery and local stories, local history, like it's gonna definitely heighten the, I think it would improve the taste. And I'm obviously, it's a biased thing, and not, it might, it might be a placebo effect, but it's all relative and important, and that's the power of a great brand and a great brand story. So
100%.
what is next for you this year then? Obviously you've niched down and looking for more sort of breweries and stuff to work with. What have you got in the pipeline?
Or in the pipeline, new brewery kicks off next week. I cannot
Amazing.
reveal the name, but this is a brewery down south that completely rebranding. So it's going to be a new name. So when you're talking about with Vale, did they keep the names of the original beers or changing? This is going to be an opportunity to make the Starbucks language of the brewery world,
Mm-hmm.
where you kind of have your own dictionary in order to communicate what it is. So that's going to be really exciting, especially because it's something a bit new. So it's a different way that you're going to position, or that we're going to position it, because we don't necessarily have history and heritage and location to rely upon. So the research is going to be really, really interesting for that. Outside of the brewery world, I'm working with some barbecue brands. So not a dissimilar market, to be honest.
Yeah.
Also tattoo brands, just anything that feels stereotypically masculine, it would
Yeah.
appear that
Yeah.
I'm getting involved in. And that is a lot of, I think it's your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
it's the energy I put out there, and it's the stuff that I'm very, very lucky to have come to me. But
Mm.
I can host a really good party these days with beers,
Yeah.
barbecue, and tattoo artists. That's not a problem.
Right. Well, everyone's heard that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
look,
yeah.
where can people get hold of you? Where can people find you? Find your work? Connect with you?
Very active on LinkedIn these days, just sharing my thoughts and opinions around branding, especially within the brewery space. But if you read between the lines, you could remove brewery and put your own business in there relatively easily. Instagram, I will, post end work on. So you'll see the end of the portfolio piece, but not necessarily the process.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also visit my website, thebrandweaver.co.uk. If you sign up for my email newsletter, you'll get random ramblings at the end of each week from my big bearded face, and some freebies in there as well about brand strategy, little templates that you can download and tasks that you can run yourself. Normally with me gawking out for 5 minutes on Loom to talk you through the
Perfect.
process as well. Plenty
Perfect.
of stuff.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks so much for walking us through that and talking about brand strategy, Tim. Really appreciate it.
No problem, dude. It's been mega.